Prepare to be whisked away on a captivating journey through the remarkable life and times of one of America's most multifaceted entertainers, Burl Ives. Picture, if you will, a charming figure with a warm smile, a twinkle in his eye, and a banjo perched comfortably on his knee as he launches into a timeless folk tune. The stage lights dim, the hush of the audience deepens, and the first melodic notes resonate through the theater. In that moment, you instantly feel the magic of a performer who could leave an indelible imprint on America's 20th century cultural landscape. From folk ballads to Broadway shows, from comedic movie roles to heartwarming Christmas specials, Burl Ives wore many hats, and each one fit him like a glove. Long before he stepped into the limelight of major theater productions or film sets in Hollywood, Burl Ives was just a bright-eyed child in small-town America, humming away with his siblings around the family hearth. Born on June 14, 1909, in a quaint environment where farmland stretched to the horizon and neighbors greeted one another on front porches, he was originally named Burl Ivanhoe Ives. The rhythms of rural life seeped into his consciousness from the start, forging a connection to the land and its stories. As he grew older, he found a special kinship with the banjo, that quintessentially American instrument that so perfectly complemented his singing voice. By the tender age of 4, Burl was already standing up at local gatherings and performing for spare coins, much to the delight of onlookers who likely had no idea they were witnessing the birth of a legendary entertainer. In these early years, singing in front of an audience wasn't just a hobby for young Burl, it was a calling. He enthusiastically participated in school recitals, community plays, and any other local production that gave him room to grow. Yet even as he nurtured this passion for performance, Burl initially imagined a different future for himself, dreaming of coaching football at the high school level. As he progressed through his teenage years, the allure of music began tugging at him more forcefully. At first, he tried to balance his love of music with his responsibilities as a student, but by his junior year in college, the pull of performing felt like a tide he could no longer resist. Casting aside his old ambitions, Burl decided to wander across the country, gleaning songs, wisdom, and life stories from everyday folks he met along the way. Roaming from town to town, he would play his banjo or sing for a meal or a couch to sleep on, collecting a trove of American folk tunes from fields and farms, humble eateries, and dusty roadsides. These melodies, passed down through generations, held something sacred in his eyes. Burl saw them as the pulse of the nation, heritage resonating in every chord and lyric. He soaked them all in, memorizing verses, writing them down, carefully gathering them so they wouldn't be lost to time. This period shaped his soul as a performer. He was no mere wanderer. He was a traveling archivist of America's living musical heritage, dedicated to safeguarding it. It wasn't until 1937 that he decided a more formal route might be useful for furthering his craft. With the money he'd managed to save, and perhaps a good deal of optimism, he made a beeline for New York City, a buzzing metropolis that beckoned aspiring performers from every corner of the nation. Yet the reception was anything but instantaneous. In the late 1930s, a singer from a rural small town, strumming a banjo, could easily be dismissed by those who labeled his style too hillbilly. But Burl Ives, persistent and not one to be deterred, found refuge in the theater world. He stepped onto off-Broadway stages, and by the next year, he had found success in productions like Ah, Wilderness, Pocahontas Preferred, and Flight. Then came Broadway itself, offering him a role in George Abbott's The Boys from Syracuse. With each new production, he proved that his brand of musical storytelling, the homespun songs, the friendly, folksy stage persona, contained far more than what dismissive critics assumed. Broadway successes soon began to bolster his reputation, ultimately validating the music he loved so dearly. By 1940, Burl Ives found himself hosting a radio program called The Wayfaring Stranger. The name alone conjured images of dusty roads, open skies, and chance encounters, everything that had given him his repertoire. Now his voice was beamed into living rooms all across the country, reaching families who might never have otherwise heard these treasured folk tunes. It was also in 1940 that a young Pete Seeger recognized Burl Ives as one of the most distinguished folk artists in the nation. Seeger, another icon in the American folk scene, invited Burl to perform at a Grapes of Wrath benefit concert in support of migrant farm workers in California, an appearance that cemented Burl's ties with the thriving folk community. For a few years, Burl honed his chops on New York City's nightclub circuit, captivating small, intimate venues with his distinctive voice and the atmospheric twang of his banjo. Then, 1945 arrived like a gust of wind, blowing open new possibilities. First, Burl made his official recital debut at New York's famed Town Hall. This was a big step up from the smaller clubs, offering a more formal stage and a larger audience. The very same year, he hopped on a train, or perhaps a plane headed west, straight into Hollywood. With the film Smokey, also released in 1945, the big screen saw the quiet magnetism that had enthralled theater audiences back east. During these middle decades of the 20th century, Burl Ives never stopped exploring the many facets of his creative life. He wrote and published an autobiography, The Wayfaring Stranger, in 1948, an apt title for someone whose wandering was more than literal. In it, he recounted his journeys through the heart of America, the people who taught him stories, and the experiences that added color to his existence. Nor did he stop with that autobiography. He went on to write collections of short stories. The Wayfaring Stranger's Notebook and Burl Ives' Tales of America, expanding the same worldview he shared through his music. For Burl, weaving tales and singing folk songs were two sides of the same coin. Both came from the same deep wellspring of American culture and tradition. Whenever he wrote, he did so with the cadence of a storyteller leaning in close so you could catch every nuance in his voice. The 1950s in America were rife with political tensions, particularly when it came to allegations of communist affiliations. Hollywood was swirling with paranoia, courtesy of the House Un-American Activities Committee, SHUAC, and the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee. Burl, being a prominent folk figure and collaborator with other passionate left-leaning performers, soon found himself under the scrutiny of these committees. He ultimately testified before them, an act that drew backlash from some of his friends, including Pete Seeger. Seeger and others believed he had sold out his associates to safeguard his own lucrative contracts. Burl, however, publicly shared that his participation was motivated by disillusionment. He claimed to have realized that certain political organizations he once supported no longer aligned with his values. Whether people took his word for it or not, the fact remained that Burl's testimony led to bitterness among some former collaborators. Fans of Seeger and the Weavers turned away from Burl's music, feeling that he had broken a sacred trust. In the ensuing decades, Burl's name became so strongly identified with nostalgic Americana that any controversy faded for the average listener. He was especially beloved for the warm and playful way he delivered children's songs. By the 1960s, a burst of folk revival was sweeping the country, with young musicians turning to older traditions for inspiration. Though Burl might have been overshadowed by more contemporary voices like Joan Baez or Bob Dylan among certain college crowds, he held on to a faithful following of fans who simply adored the authenticity he represented. his presence on holiday specials, particularly his role as the genial narrator in animated Christmas stories, made him a staple in many households. Each December, a new generation encountered that famous baritone, learning the words to jingles and sing-along classics courtesy of Burl Ives. However, long before he became the voice of snowy holiday cheer, Burl had displayed his dramatic range on stage and in films. During the 1950s and 1960s, he acted in several motion pictures that showcased his talent for bringing deeply nuanced characters to life, a far cry from the jovial persona we often associate with him. In 1958, he made a major splash with his performance in The Big Country. That role earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, a high honor that underscored his ability to deftly switch from gentle musical entertainer to commanding screen presence. Beyond that, one of his most famous stage-to-film adaptations was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, in which he portrayed Big Daddy Pollitt, a loud, boisterous, and domineering character who was the polar opposite of the kindly narrator image he later presented in family-friendly Christmas specials. By the 1990s, the term folk music could mean anything from acoustic, singer-songwriter tunes to experimental jazz fusion, reggae influences, and beyond. Folk festivals became vibrant, eclectic celebrations of diverse sounds. And though Burl Ives didn't quite live to see that full shift, he was aware that his legacy was rooted in the more traditional side of folk. Songs you might have heard drifting off a front porch on a lazy summer evening. While he dazzled Broadway in the 1930s, became a radio host in the early 1940s, scored hits in Hollywood, and even garnered accolades for dramatic acting, he never forgot where he came from. When you heard him sing live, there was an unspoken subtext that invited you to step onto that dusty road beside him, as though you too were a wandering troubadour collecting stories under an expansive sky. It was a rare thing, and audiences responded in droves, relishing every anecdote he told. Burl Ives eventually became synonymous with the cozy warmth of the Christmas season. It's hard to picture the holidays in many American households without hearing his distinctive voice at least once in December, reminding everyone of Jingle Bells, red-nosed reindeer, and the simple joys of winter. His cameo as Sam the Snowman in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is legendary, an annual staple that brings families together before the TV set. Generations learned holiday tunes from that special, singing along to a holly jolly Christmas with smiles lighting up their faces. It's remarkable that a man once considered too hillbilly for certain Manhattan critics could end up representing such an integral slice of the nation's cherished traditions. Yet it would be a mistake to reduce Burl Ives solely to holiday cheer. He gave life to a wide range of characters on screen, from comedic roles that showcased his genial side to serious layered portrayals that dug into the human psyche. His performance in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, where he commanded the stage as Big Daddy, overshadowing the rest of the cast with his imposing presence. Even if you didn't agree with Big Daddy's worldview, you couldn't deny that Burl's performance was a force to be reckoned with, a testament to how effortlessly he could shift from approachable banjo-strumming balladeer to fearsome patriarch in the blink of an eye. His Oscar-winning role in The Big Country presented yet another facet of his ability. With that gentle, melodic voice, you might expect him to be typecast as kindly grandfathers forever. Yet he demonstrated a fierce, authentic grit in that Western setting. Audiences found themselves in awe of the range that lay beneath the surface of a man who, for many, was practically the living embodiment of an avuncular bedtime storyteller. But that was Burl Ives, multidimensional, thoroughly American, and forever brimming with artistic curiosity. Even his relationship with the folk scene, though tarnished by accusations around the HUAC investigations, signified a deeper complexity. America in the mid-20th century was a place of ideological battles, suspicion, and sometimes oppressive demands to toe a certain political line. Many folk singers, actors, and intellectuals found themselves caught in the crossfire. Some saw themselves blacklisted, others left the country, and still others compromised in ways that permanently damaged friendships. Burl Ives was no stranger to that turmoil. His differences with Pete Seeger epitomize the emotional stakes of the era. Yet in telling his side of the story, Burl insisted that he was protecting the country he cherished from what he regarded as subversive elements, and that his conscience was clear, even if it left some relationships irreparably frayed. He passed away on April 14, 1995, in Anacortes, Washington. The cause was a combination of mouth cancer and congestive heart failure, illnesses that finally dimmed the bright spark he had carried for so long. He was 85, a grand age for a man whose life was so richly lived, whose wanderings had shaped a golden tapestry of American folk song. His body was laid to rest in Mound Cemetery in Jasper County, Illinois, the state where he was born and the soil that first nurtured him. While the news of his passing brought sorrow, fans all over the world felt gratitude for the countless hours of joy he had given them. So the next time you find yourself craving a narrative that weaves in the landscape of rural America, or longing for songs that speak to simpler times, remember Burl Ives. Remember how one performer, initially dismissed as a hillbilly, cultivated a magnificent career that encompassed theater, film, writing, and a trove of mesmerizing folk tunes. Remember that big, hearty grin, the amiable banter, and the sense of wonder he evoked about the vast tapestry of American life. Whether he was gathering songs on a cross-country trek, delighting children with whimsical rhymes, or commanding the silver screen, Burl always exuded a sense that each performance was a fresh adventure worth embarking upon. And now, even as the final chord fades and the spotlight dims, the spirit of Burl Ives resonates. One imagines him tipping his hat to the audience he so cherished, wishing them well and softly urging them to carry forward the stories, the laughter, and the songs. His voice, captured forever on vinyl, film, tape, and digital files, echoes with a gentle reminder. There's always a new story waiting to be told, a new melody to be discovered, a new perspective to be shared. That, in essence, is the legacy of this legendary singer, actor, and author. Thank you for taking this journey through the life and legacy of a man who used his gifts to preserve the musical heritage of an entire nation. Perhaps you've learned something new, or maybe you've rekindled a cherished childhood memory of hearing Burl's voice on a snowy December evening. Whichever the case, I hope you've been entertained, inspired, and maybe even motivated to go exploring for more stories and songs from our collective past. And with that, our exploration winds to a close, yet the enchantment of Burl Ives endures, sure as a well-loved tune that refuses to fade. Join me again next time, because there's always another story lurking around the corner, another hidden gem from the annals of showbiz history, another unsung hero whose life might just spark our curiosity. Keep searching, keep listening, and keep the music alive in your heart. Until our next adventure, let's tip our hats to Burl Ives. May his ballads continue to bring warmth, wonder, and the spirit of American folk traditions to all who care to listen. And trust me, there are plenty more stories to uncover, so stick around for even more fascinating tales on the horizon. I'll see you soon.